All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives. I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration and collaboration and expertise. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we are residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibilities entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, meeting of the Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. Thank you. With us this evening, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the Planning Board, and to my left, our Vice Chair, Joyce Leary Clark, and Planning Board members Jeff Brucho, Carrie Lynn Lane, and Matt DiCiani. And with us this evening are staff members Lisa Harmon and our planner Emily Cole Prescott, along with our Ward 5 City Council liaison Phil Hatch. Our first item on the agenda this evening is the approval of our October 1st, 2024 site walk notes.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the October 1st, 2024 site walk notes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented the site walk notes as presented by Joyce and second by Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. And with that, our October 1st draft meeting minutes will be available the 12th. Is that still the case? Thank you. Our next item on the agenda this evening is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public that would wish to come and speak before the board to discuss non-agenda items and anything non-specific that's before the board this evening. If anyone would like to, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will gather those comments and address them as necessary. All right. Seeing no participation, we will continue to our next item on the agenda. Our next item, as you'll see here, is our planning board public hearing guidelines. And this is a document posted for every meeting. And we have hard copies at the back of the table. If anyone has any questions, feel free, we can discuss those as necessary as well. Moving along to our next item, applications, reviews, and public hearings. Our first item on this agenda is item 6A, and this is Crescent Woods subdivision, which is off of Samuel Marshall Drive. This is map 90, lot 22-1, and this is for final subdivision review this evening. And this is a continued application review for a 9-lot residential subdivision in the West Residential Zoning District. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything to add to that description. Just wanted to point out the general correspondence item on the after the fact packet regarding a legal opinion from Phil Saucier that specifically goes into the question that you asked us to follow up on regarding section 186 and 180 of our ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So, board members, does anyone have any questions on this after the fact correspondence for Emily? Not sure if everyone's had a moment to review that document yet. All right, and with that, do we have the applicant with us this evening?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Caleb Barassa. I'm a project manager from Gorwell Palmer. Here in place of Drew Gagnon tonight. He wasn't able to attend, but he's brought me up to speed and certainly happy to answer any additional questions to the best of my ability. I'm here on behalf of Dan and Karen Foster from Crescent Properties, LLC. Didn't have too much prepared for a presentation, but just wanted to run through. We've reviewed conditions of approval and are certainly amenable to those. And I believe that, we're happy to further the discussion on the moratorium piece if need be. But between that and I believe the rest of the conditions, I think we're certainly looking for the board to grant us approval here tonight, take a vote, and answer any questions from there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so back to board. Any questions or comments?
I guess just briefly, Mr. Chair, and maybe you can answer this, Caleb. The recent rain, I guess, didn't change the issue with not being able to find groundwater sufficient to do the proper testing?
No, I don't believe that they've made it back out to check into that. But as soon as we know, we'll certainly report back to the board and planning staff as to the conditions or if the groundwater is able to be found.
Sure. Well, doesn't seem like we've had that much rain since you were here last.
No,
so
not too
I don't
much.
imagine it changed much.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Any additional thoughts from board members, questions? So we have our draft findings of fact and draft conditions of approval this evening. At our previous meeting on October 1st, we opened and closed the public hearing and looked to review findings of fact, as I mentioned, and conditions of approval, along with this a legal opinion that Emily has provided us.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the findings of fact as presented.
All right, thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on motion? All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes. Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
And Mr. Chair, I'd move to adopt the conditions of approval as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the draft findings of, or excuse me, the draft conditions of approval as presented?
I'd just note that the condition of approval number 30 does address the nitrogen removal systems, giving staff authority to remove that condition if they determine they're no longer necessary.
Yes.
Just to have it on the record beyond the written record.
Sure. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of the motion to adopt the conditions of approval as presented? Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve final subdivision for Crescent Woods subdivision, map 90, lot 22-1.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I'll second.
Second by Carolyn, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Abstain.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0 and 1 abstention. All right, thank you. All right. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6B, and this is 4 Lerner Road. This is map 69, lot 8-2, and this is a continued application review for site plan and conditional use for a proposed facility expansion for 18,620 square foot warehouse building and a 2,400 square foot self-storage building and associated site improvements within the business industrial zoning district. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been updates to this that we provided in the meeting packet. We recommend you look at design guidelines. We give you the review standards. We have been going back and forth recently with the applicant on the buffer deed restrictions that the city engineer requested. And then the HVAC mechanical equipment has a condition of approval requiring screening and final review. We did also hear from the city engineer that he had no further comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this moment? All right, and with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, good evening. Chris Taylor with Sebago Technics, representing the applicant, Whipping Post LLC. Just briefly, there were a couple of changes to the plan since we were last here. One of the things that was changed in the building was to add the horizontal accent band to the rear of the building to kind of match the sides of the building to provide a little bit more, breaking up of the massing of that rear wall. The other thing that was changed on the site plans was the addition of two additional trees along Leonard Road. This was a request by the Parks and Recreational Director. He also had a comment about adding trees behind the building, and just wanted to note that there's a underdrain soil filter that doesn't show up on the landscape plan, and which doesn't allow us to add trees back there. Those were the two changes to the plans. And we did also have a comment, as Emily mentioned, about one of the draft conditions of approval. This would be draft condition 6, and it's one of the bullet items. It's the third from the bottom regarding recorded buffer deed restriction, and just kind of pointing out that there's a wetland and stream behind the site that runs through the site. The stream runs east and west of the off property. It's in an industrial area. It's not a, special significance wetland, and to put a deed restriction on it seems a little excessive for this type of development. We'll note that there's restrictions in place or regulations in place by the DEP and City of Saco that prevent development in wetlands and adjacent to streams. The main DEP in the NRPA regulations, they have a 25-foot no disturbance buffer to streams. So there are a number of protections to this area already. So in place of a buffer deed restriction, we would propose a condition of approval that any further expansion of the facility would result in disturbance within the 25-foot buffer of a stream shall come before the planning board for review and approval. It just leaves a little bit more flexibility for, anything way down the line that could be imagined because deed restrictions just run with the land. They take a little bit of time and energy and money to implement and record. So we're just asking that, not that any future development's planned, but just trying to minimize paperwork and fees to set this deed restriction up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions, board members, for the applicant?
Well, Mr. Chair, I had a question about the expansion, the parking or the expansion of the parking and the comments from the landscape peer reviewer about the need for landscaped islands. It sounds like you had a real difference of opinion in terms of how much parking there was going to be. Can you just explain the math, maybe?
Yeah.
Because over 10,000 versus 4,300 is a pretty huge difference.
Yes. So the plans show, a decent amount of pavement, and part of that, or a large part of that, is associated with the self-storage, the expansion of the self-storage building. That building is within the existing pavement limits, and there's some grading that has to be done around the building, so we'll be repaving a lot of the existing impervious area. And I think that number was included in the landscape peer reviews number in terms of how much area was getting repaved. There's also an area along the side of the proposed warehouse that is being used for access and emergency vehicle access to the side of the building and rear of the building that we're not considering part of the parking lot. So we provided a calculation showing that there's 11 additional parking spaces in the new paved area, and the area associated with those 11 spaces, and as well as a 24-foot drive aisle behind those new parking spaces. and that area doesn't exceed the 5,000 square feet.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
So, Mr. Chair, I would move to amend proposed condition of approval number 6, bullet point 6, to provide that any further expansion that will result in disturbance within 25 feet of the stream will require planning board approval.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have kind of a difficult time not following the recommendation here on the deed restriction. I think it's pretty important. I understand that there are lots of regulations that they need to follow. I also feel like we as a board have been pretty flexible and welcoming as far as adjustments for the parking. The amount of impervious area on this site, relatively gracious on the design characteristics of the building, particularly on the sides and the back. It's not a very aesthetically, interesting building, but it's serving a purpose. And you've heard me say that I tend to support the industrial park serving the purpose. And but at some point, I think we need to be aware of the wetlands and the guidance that our city staff is offering to us. We see time and time again when facilities are sold, and there are ways that they pay impact fees, and they're able to fill and mitigate or remove some of those wetlands. And I just don't. I mean, I don't. I think we're leaving the door open. We should really try to seal the deal for that lot. They're developing it to its maximum at this point. I just tend to want to, adhere or heed the advice of our professional staff. There's a reason that they really called out that deed restriction. Maybe they have a little more foresight of what might happen with that in the future, and I would tend to support their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional discussion? I guess my only discussion topic would be, Joyce, would it make sense to modify that condition or remove that item and add your verbiage as as a separate item entirely, only because it's within the pre-construction meeting component? So I guess more of a question than a discussion topic, but.
That's an interesting point, and I was wondering if instead of the modification that I suggested, the you know, continuing to keep the provision requiring the buffer areas to be marked in the field. But I see your point. I mean, if this is pre-construction, there's still a question of whether the buffer deed restriction still has to be created finally. No, I'm going to leave my motion as is, and we can just vote it up or down.
Okay. Any additional discussion? So motion made by Joyce, second by Carrie Lynn to modify condition of approval, item 6.6, to state, to remove, where is it here? To remove the buffer area should be marked in the field, and copy of the recorded buffer deed restriction shall be provided to the planning department. To any expansion of the site within 25 feet of the disturbance area of the stream will require planning board approval. Did that capture it? Okay. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
No.
Jeff?
No.
I'll vote no as well. So that motion is 2-3 against. So that condition will remain unless another motion is brought before us. Any other items of discussion for the board? So let's address briefly here the landscape islands. Joyce had a good question. Does the board have any additional questions or comments on that item? I know we've talked about parking quite a bit in that revision there.
I honestly don't ever remember talking about landscape islands before today regarding this particular application. I think we were assuming that we were dealing with an existing property and a large amount of existing pavement, and we were more talking about restriping rather than adding impervious surface. So I feel like what's being added is really what the application is about.
I agree. All right, with that, the changes to the building, with that, so we have these revised elevations here, we have this architectural color banding. Any comments on the revised architectural elevations?
Can we pull that up on the big screen?
Thoughts, questions?
I'm not convinced that a horizontal line breaks up a massive wall. I guess I just assume that design elements would be something vertical to actually break it up. I'm not an architect.
So there are, I guess, the focus of the building design was towards the front of the building as well as the corner that faces Leonard Road, and providing kind of glazing at that corner as kind of being the most visible, as well as the front of the building. The front of the building is broken up quite a bit by the overhead doors. There's different siding colors and orientation, vertical and horizontal, as well as glass doors and canopies. So quite a bit of architectural features for a warehouse building on the front. We've got that corner piece, and the side and the rear have differing colors and orientations of the siding. Again, on the corners, we've got the vertical siding in a darker color, and then horizontal siding through the middle with a lighter gray color. Added that horizontal band at the rear. At the last meeting, the rear elevation was the one that was kind of brought up specifically of needing more feature to it. And so we revised the plans to add that horizontal band to kind of match the sides of the building as well. So with the kind of the three delineations of it, we thought we were making a good effort of trying to break up this building. And particularly the rear isn't very visible. There's not a butters, there's a stream behind there that has some tree growth. So, trying to focus on the front and the Leonard Road side.
Thank you, Chris. I think it works. Between the corners, the verticality of the siding on the corners, and then that horizontal band, I think it achieves what the design standards are looking for. I don't think, given its use, I don't think superfluous static thrown about is necessary. I think it works. Any other board member questions or comments? I think let me go back to my list here. Any other board member questions or thoughts, comments?
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft findings of fact as presented.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any discussion on the motion to adopt the draft findings of fact as presented? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I move the motion to adopt the conditions of approval as presented.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the draft conditions of approval as presented? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the application for site plan and conditional use review for 4 Leonard Road, map 69, lot 8-2.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I apologize. I was not able to catch you in between the motions, but we do need just to clarify findings in 2 spots.
I'm sorry.
So under item T, no, I just have no concerns under the findings of fact have been raised, but the board should make a finding on this standard. You can leave it as no concerns have been raised, but we just need to strike the rest of that if that's what you're going to leave it as. You should probably base it on application materials or no public comment or something.
Yeah, I would move to amend sub T to read that no concerns have been raised based on the plans submitted, the most recent site plans submitted, and the presentation by the applicant.
All right, thank you, Joyce.
I will second.
Thank you, Jeff. Is any questions or, excuse me, additional discussion by the board on this motion? Is that the only item on findings, Emily?
I believe the only other one was relative to design, which you've answered sort of through your discussion. But it's item C, the applicant has submitted responses to design standard questions raised by the board. Board members should make a finding on this standard. Certainly, just, you can reference the discussion you had tonight. You could reference the updated plan sheet in front of you, sheet A2, but just probably want to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Joyce and Jeff, if we could would it be appropriate to amend this motion? And I guess, Emily, I'm not a pro yet at Robert's Rules, do we need to make a motion to reconsider the previous motion for findings, or can we just make an amendment to our motion of findings?
I think you could just make one more, after you're done making this one, you can just make one more motion to approve the amended findings.
Okay.
So I'd move to amend my motion to also amend 6 sub C to provide that the applicant has submitted responses to design standards questions raised by the board, and with the addition of sheet A2 has satisfied those criteria.
I will second.
All right. Thank you, Joyce and Jeff. All right, any additional discussion on that motion? Motion to amend findings of fact item C and T under heading 6. All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of fact as amended.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I will second.
Second, Jeff. Thank you. Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the amended findings of fact.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6C, and this is 71 Industrial Park Road, map 71, lot 1-2, and this is a continued application review for an expansion of an existing laydown yard with associated infrastructure improvements within the industrial zoning district. This is presented by DM Roma. And any additional item or topics on this item, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have provided draft findings of fact and conditions of approval for your review. One item the board had asked me to follow up with from the site walk was to reach out to our environmental peer reviewer consultant and ask them if they had any recommendations for stormwater runoff regarding to this site. I did give you an email from them. Just keep in mind that they did not review all of the application materials in depth like our city engineer did. I did also speak with our city engineer about this question, and he did not have concerns about stormwater runoff specific to this site because the applicants presented to us several times that no hazardous materials will be stored on site. But I did want to make sure that you knew we followed up and provided you that correspondence. It's in the after the fact packet. I had every intention of putting it in the meeting packet, but we had meeting packets done pretty early this time around, so we didn't have it in there for you.
Great.
As far as if you want to talk about that specifically, just to capture any concerns, I would recommend adding a no hazardous materials to be stored on site condition to the list. I don't think it's quite on here, so that's something we can talk about when you're ready. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions, board members, for Emily at this moment? All right, and with that, we have the applicant with us this evening.
Good evening, Jason Haskell with DM Roma Consulting Engineers, here on behalf of the applicant Vic Sam Holdings LLC. Since we met when we had the site walk and then the follow-up planning board meeting after that, we've gone through and delineated all the laydown spaces, kind of at the recommendation of you and staff. We've also added notes regarding if the laydown areas change, then we will definitely coordinate a meeting with the planning staff to make sure everything is up to snuff and providing, the space needed for everything. We've also, at the request of the board, we've added the reclaim asphalt through the drive aisles, where a lot of the, movement's going to happen. All the areas that are for the laydown area that doesn't get moved very often, it will remain gravel. But all the more readily used areas will be further stabilized with the reclaim. Then we've also been working with staff on a sign that we can put up at the edge of land disturbance to show that pretty much to explain to everyone on the site that this is the limits of the approved disturbance. Any further disturbance will require planning or to contact the city planner if any expansion is warranted or proposed. So we'll make sure that that gets finalized and the signs get put up as part of the approval. Here to answer any questions you may still have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not so sure it's for the applicant, but maybe for city staff. When we talked about, and thank you for kind of including the laydown area, the proposed storage area, and on our site walk, I thought I had interpreted that request a little bit differently, that they would be almost like updating that annually when they do their stormwater filing, so that the city staff kind of knew the layout, whether it be for first responders as well as monitoring where the items were for possible runoff. Because I thought we were going to try to work that in as a condition of approval. and I didn't see it in our conditions of approval tonight. And maybe I just misinterpreted, and maybe city staff feels like having it on the one plan that's submitted now with the condition that if it changes, they submit an update. Maybe that's acceptable. I just thought it was going to be kind of just an annual kind of record-keeping tag. Even if it's no changes for 5 years, at least it was submitted every time they did their stormwater filing. I don't know what Emily thought the intent timing-wise was.
Thank you, Jeff. Emily?
Would you like, so Mr. Chair, I had interpreted that similarly, Jeff, except my interpretation was we were going to have one plan, and if anything changed, they were supposed to submit a new plan, but that we would check it during the annual stormwater management update that they have to submit. And that they would check it as well, like if Jason goes out and there's changes, that he would report those changes in with the applicant. So it would be still triggered on their annual event. It would be more of if there are changes, they have to get them updated into city staff.
Thank you.
If that's a direction you'd like us to go, that's fine. I just gave the kind of a proposal all at once, and just if the board feels that they want a yearly recertification, if you will, of the laydown areas, then we can make that happen.
Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I guess my intent is not to make it a much more costly thing for the applicant, and I think Ms. Cole Prescott kind of hit on it. I'd just like to maybe change our condition a little bit, saying that at the time of their annual stormwater review, city staff will be noting storage locations, and if anything's deviated, they have the right to request an updated. I think that would save the applicant from having to pay staff to go and do this every single time, every single year. But it also was making it very clear that the intent is that city staff, when they're doing their inspections, are going to be noting this, and if there is a deviation, they have full right to ask for an updated plan. I think that would make me feel better as a board member, and if that's sufficient for staff without incurring additional cost every single year for the applicant. Maybe we...
Thank you, Jeff. Emily, are you jotting a draft condition there?
Yeah, I was just putting that into words here. So Jeff, would you mind repeating that one more time?
I thought I was getting the idea out there, and our gifted condition writers would work. The intent is that the submitted laydown area site plan will be checked at each annual stormwater review inspection by city staff. And if staff notices a deviation in storage locations, they will request an updated site map of storage areas.
And if it matters, I find that acceptable too.
Thank you.
I have Jeff moved here, but I think it's really Jeff recommended. I don't think he moved it yet.
I was just about to ask, when he read this, if he would make it a formal motion, yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to add the following condition of approval. The submitted laydown area site plan will be checked at each annual stormwater review inspection by city staff, and if staff notices a deviation in storage location on site, They will request an updated site plan of storage areas.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carolyn. Excuse me. Second by Joyce.
We all look alike.
Any additional discussion on the motion before us? All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt condition, this would be 14, Emily, as discussed.
And Mr. Chair, I move to add condition of approval number 15, that no hazardous materials shall be stored on site.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any discussion on the motion to adopt or to add, item number 15, that no hazardous materials will be stored on site? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to add item 15 as discussed.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of fact as presented.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the findings of fact as presented? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
And Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the conditions of approval as amended.
I will second.
Thank you for that motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the conditions of approval as amended this evening? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Chair, I move to approve the application for site plan and conditional use review for 71 Industrial Park Road, map 71, lot 1-2.
I will second.
All right, thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6D. This is 992 Portland Road, map 63, lot 4. And this is a public hearing and continued application of completeness review this evening for a site plan application for a 10 tradesperson garage units with site improvements in the Portland Road zoning district. This is presented this evening by Sebago Technics. Anything to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have presented with you applicant comment responses and updated site plan set to respond to the checklist items, and we had the site walk today, so we recommend that the board debrief about that. And we have some peer reviews in the meeting packet for your consideration. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily, briefly, board members? So as Emily had mentioned, we had a site walk on this item this evening. Myself, Carrie Lynn Lane, and Jeff Bruchot were on site along with Emily. We walked through with the applicant, had some good discussion. We discussed landscaping, site buffers, project location, some CMP, utility, access. So it was a good site walk as always. Anything that I'm missing or didn't mention, Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah, likewise, it was very eye-opening. There's not that much buffering on the site. And it's just interesting because the lots that have been developed around them are very close in their setbacks as well. They kind of chose to do that, and I kind of, weigh that out. But I think there was a lot of visual gaining of the entire site slopes back pretty much towards Route 1. So it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of runoff from this site, and they'll very easily be able to control their stormwater from any of the new impervious area. It's very tucked in from the road, given how they're building it around the house. I don't think you were going to have a whole lot of visual impact from Route 1. And we kind of noticed, the entrance, when we talked about some landscaping, the possibility of, there's one tree kind of on the southwest corner, or southwest corner along Route 1. Question if that's going to be able to remain or not. Kind of looks like it's going to be coming out because of their sedimentation pond. So, I didn't see anything that was particularly, concerning to me as far as the site and possible impacts to neighbors. I always get a little bit mixed, especially in this Route 1 corridor, because we're trying to do so many different uses in close proximity. People that have invested in residential units are maybe opposed to having commercial units directly next door. That's unfortunately, though, part of the zoning, right? We redid the zoning, and I talk about trying to protect our industrial zone, and there are some spots where we don't have a transition area, and it's industrial right to residential. This is going to kind of exist in that capacity, but I think the way the layout is, and most of the noise will be kind of contained towards their lot or the area that is buffered by the cemetery area and vegetation. So I didn't see anything that I felt like was a particular flag with the design as they have it proposed. We'll clarify some of the utilities, the electric, when they get final design on that, but I think everything that they're going to need to do is going to be manageable with minor changes on this site. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
I guess, Mr. Chair, just one more comment, I suppose, is the lot in front of the apartments is still vacant, and I understand that's going to be developed commercially at some point as well. So this isn't going to be the only commercial type use in that immediate area. I think there's going to be one immediately to the south of it in the not too distant future.
Great, thank you. And with us this evening, we have the applicant, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Board. Jake Honeywell with Saco Technics, representing our clients, William Gibson. A couple changes that I wanted to go over since the plans were last in front of you all. We had moved the centralized mailbox back from Portland Road to be 75 feet off the edge. Additionally, added a no parking sign to the striped parking area on the south west corner. A revision regarding a pipe size error on one of our notes. And then additionally, like we had discussed at the site walk today, still going to continue to coordinate with CMP regarding the need for a pad-mounted transformer, or whether or not the transformer on the pole across the road will be able to supply the development with power. I would also like to acknowledge we did receive landscape comments Friday the 11th, and we will certainly work through those and work directly with staff to take care of any concerns there. And yeah, with that, I'd like to hand it back over to you all for any further comments or questions.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this moment? All right, so as a reminder for the board, this is, our first step is an application of completeness review. And then we have, this is also scheduled for a public hearing this evening.
Mr. Chair, I move to find the application for 992 Portland Road, the Tradesman's Garage, complete.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing for 992 Portland Road.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion to open the public hearing? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to discuss or ask questions on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect all comments and questions and then respond at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one wishing to speak, I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, back to the board. Questions, comments, concerns? As we discussed, there's a few items here still in review. Landscape comments being one. I'll jump in there. Based on our site walk, as we discussed, there's not a whole lot of buffer there. We have that 6-foot stockade fence. There's a little bit of vegetation closer to the road that's remaining. We had one large tree towards the north. We're hoping to keep that. The tree south of the property will be removed for some of that detention and infiltration pond. Understanding how the CMP, how that's going to be resolved, understanding the impact, that'll be good to have. I guess as far as the screening, we need screening there. We've had the discussion, properties, the adjacent property and structures are close. I guess I think it's peculiar that we have all the properties on Portland Road. None of them have a massive 330-foot stockade fence going around the property. So that's one item I'm evaluating myself, understanding or seeing how appropriate that is, opposed to landscaping. I guess my gut's telling me a combination of the two. I don't think I'm suggesting maybe necessarily all landscaping or all fence. I think maybe there's a happy medium in there between the two. And then the architectural considerations to it, we've got where this property is right in between a bunch of small little cottages and then some larger multi-story massing buildings. And then this one is an L-shaped, single-story, almost, I guess I don't think the building's quite there yet, fitting into the character of the rest of the buildings around. I don't have an answer for you. That's not, we always say we're not here to design it, but those are the pieces for me that jump out that I think still need some thought, but I'm not sure what some of the other board members think. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess for me, I'm not quite there. I can kind of, or in the same plane, I don't see there being as much necessarily conflict. We're always kind of walking this walk where we're trying to provide buffers, and oftentimes applicants will come and the buffers are on the neighboring property, right? There's no guarantee that buffer is going to remain. Just as for the cottages, you know, they chose to push the setback or to use as minimum setback as possible to set those cottages. And if it happens to be 15 feet from their deck, where the stockade fence is going to be, you know, either we need to take more accountability for that as a board when we know we're going to allow a residential use, being that close to a buffer that could be mixed use. And I don't know how do you fix that? I mean, this applicant has the same challenge. He has a relatively narrow lot that they're trying to maximize on our growth, or what is intended to be one of our growth areas, intended to be mixed use. They're doing, I think, a good job fitting into there. They're not just doing all residential. It's a different use. They're obviously trying to get as much out of their investment as everyone that owns land in these developed areas. And, you know, a lot of the small buffering trees that we noticed tonight were on a bermed area that were actually on the abutter's property. So what they have to soften the image of what could be a stockade fence is on their side. I might have a very different view if it was going to be a chain link fence with a privacy screen that was slid in there. Maybe you're onto something. Maybe they could do a little design characteristics with sections of fence that might be a little bit taller, a little different top profile for a couple sections, and then drop down. I'm not feeling like that has to be a whole lot. I would definitely be in favor if they came to us and said, hey, you know, every 25 feet, there'll be another section of fence that goes up 2 feet with a different type of top profile and then drops down. But I don't think necessarily the burden is 100% on them to buffer the residential uses that chose to build that close to the property line. If I were to be one of their prospective clients, I would feel much better having the back side of the building fully fenced in for security reasons. And then people could kind of come and go through the property. So for me, I'm not really as focused on the buffering in this case. because it is going to be mixed use. It's a dynamic area out there. We have, like you pointed out, we have multi-floor, multifamily buildings, and then 2 lots away, we have a very large manufacturing facility. Then you have a car dealerships. You have all of these different uses. So I don't know how we achieve, if I were to be reading our ordinances and we're trying to have a transition and be like and compatible with the neighboring buildings, how do we hold it to that standard in this district? Because there's such a wide array of uses that we've now allowed through our zoning. It's a bit of a challenge. And for me, it's to kind of step back and say, okay, zoning is that they want that mixed use feel. And with that, I have to step back a little bit on making everything look, harmonious in character and like a very much a soft transitional zone. So with that being said, I'm not as feeling like the need to design every bit of the project. Obviously, if some of the board members have concerns and they can come back with something that can be a compromise and somewhere in the middle, I wouldn't be opposed to different type of fencing or something to make it look a little softer, but I didn't have any particular heartburn with how it was proposed at this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members?
Yeah, I mean, I agree about the buffer, that for security purposes, a fence makes more sense than arborvitae, which we like. I mean, it would be nice to have some green, but yeah, my concern is more the look of the building itself, that it's not just one long garage. If there's windows or something to break it up, and we're not necessarily talking big windows, but just something that makes it less of a big wall. I think that would go a long ways. I'm not as worried about the scale of it either, because I mean it's a one-story building, so it's not a massive commercial structure. It seems like scale-wise, the height of the building is very modest.
Yeah, Jeff.
So for me, and I guess I'm kind of having a hard time seeing the elevations. I don't know if they're in a different section of the packet, but I guess that was one of my questions when we were on the site walk and I spoke to your counterpart, Matt. Because of that 3-foot drop in elevation from the back side of the lot, the north end of the lot towards the road, he indicated that every couple of units, every couple of one of the rental units, there would be a slight step. And I guess in my mind, when you were making that transition, there might have been some change in roof line at those steps, possibly, which would have, I thought, added a lot to the building, versus just kind of having one flat roof line and then these doors start going down to the front. I thought that might look odd. So I guess if you had, I don't know, a better exterior profile, that might help with some of the board members' concerns about the aesthetic appeal of the building, which might help it flow with the site.
Yeah, Jeff. So elevations are in our September 17th packet, page 339, if you wanted to look it up. But yeah, exactly as you and Joyce were saying. I think, Jay, we've got 4 feet or so, I think, of elevation between the high end and the low end based on some of the discussion we were having on site. So I think maybe just an updated elevation set to really, really show us what the building's going to do through that 4 feet. And both Jeff and Joyce were sort of, getting to where I was hoping they were going to get to. It's the overall context. It's not necessarily one piece. And again, I'm not saying, don't do this or I don't like that. Just really sort of understanding the whole context. So it's just a 6-foot stockade fence running 330 feet, and then it goes along the rear of the property for another 130 feet or so. And then it's just this long building of just a long, uninterrupted gable roof. I do see some of the windows in there. they seem out of proportion with the rest of the building. So I just sort of, some of these little cues, I think, not to take away from Jeff saying it's a different use, we have multiple uses in that zoning district. But I think, you know, it just complementing, you know, the rest of the structures around. My thought was, you know, perhaps something could happen with the roof to delineate some of the spaces that are in there, something like that. But I'm just taking the overall thought and concept and design, just sort of one step further.
No, absolutely, and we hear your concerns with the how that building is going to step, and we certainly will take another pass at that with our architect to
Sure.
look closer at how those elevations are going to work as the building goes up the property.
Yeah, because as Jeff mentioned, it is a mixed-use zone, but it's not an industrial zone. So that's what I'm trying to make sure we don't let it turn into an industrial zone. That look. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other board member thoughts? So there's still a few items here with Public Works. We talked about CMP, some answers there. We talked about the peer review comments from the landscape reviewer. Are there any items that I've missed, Emily, that you can think of off the top of your head?
No, thank you.
Emily, if the board finds it appropriate, is there another, do we have a next meeting date that we could continue discussion on this item?
So we have some space on November 12th, and we have some space on November 19th. I'd recommend going with the 12th.
Okay. Jeff?
If it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, I move to continue the review of the application of 992 Portland Road to November 12th to allow the applicant time to present some options for our concerns tonight, and also direct staff to draft a draft condition of approval and finding of facts.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on that motion? So motion made and second to continue application review until November 12th. And at that time, the applicant can respond to staff and peer review comments, provide revisions, and staff can draft findings of fact and conditions of approval. All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6E. This is 134 Flag Pond Road, map 76, lot 12-12-1. And this is a public hearing and continued application review for conditional use for a single employee dog grooming business in the low-density residential zoning district. Emily.
Our assistant planner is going to walk you through this one.
Great, thank you.
Give her a minute to get set up, please.
While the ClickShare is still thinking about things, hello everybody. So you saw this conditional use application for a home occupation for a single-use dog grooming business at 134 Flag Pond Road back during your October 1st meeting. During that meeting, you did find the application complete. And since then, the applicant has provided an updated interior plan for the business, just showing where the dog grooming sink was going to go and also showing where the small bathroom for the applicant is going to go, so she doesn't have to go back to the main house while she is in the middle of her workday. So after that was submitted for review, it was looked at by the Code Enforcement Department just to ensure that, you know, the small bathroom plus the dog grooming sink wouldn't use more water than the septic could handle. Just as a reminder, this business will have its own septic system separate from the single-family home that is on the property. And the Director of Code Enforcement did confirm that the new septic system has been designed appropriately both to handle the dog grooming business and the small bathroom that is planned for this space. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I am happy to answer them. And the applicant is also here if you would like to hear from her.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at this moment? All right, we have the applicant with us this evening as well, if you have anything to add or would like to add. All right. Back to board member discussion. Any questions, concerns? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I was reading through the conditions of approval. I know what we might hear at a public comment, public hearing, but I didn't know if it would be appropriate we consider maybe having like a limit of hours, like how early you can start. Maybe we could discuss that with the applicant. I think it might be important to have something to kind of tie it in for neighbors, you know, whether somebody's bringing their dog at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's just a thought. I thought we might want to have some hours in there if we can come to mutually agreeable times.
I guess I wonder what the hours of operation of the car repair place next door are. Is that a car repair place or a?
Could you speak that into the mic, Elena? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm Elena Everett, the applicant. The car repair shop and inspection place for vehicles and motorcycle is next to the garage, a separate standing garage. I do believe the operating hours for the garage are 8 to 5, Monday through Saturday. The operation hours, I do believe were submitted. I do not intend to be open. All operation hours are 8 to 5, Tuesday through Saturday. So I do intend to stand within standard business hours.
So, Mr.
Great,
Chair,
thank you.
I guess with that, if I were a neighbor having, with our good neighbor standards and our ordinances, where it's a business and it's not just a dog that's being sat, if we did like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we would fall within both sets of zoning, and it gives just a little bit of stipulation. It sounds like it would be perfectly agreeable to the applicant. Just show that we had a little bit of forethought for that. I would assume that there's typically only one pet at a time that's coming? Or?
Typically, there might be some overlap, but I do not intend to. It's one-on-one. The intention is to have only one-on-one with minimum overlap.
But if there were to be overlap, there could be dogs barking at each other as they're exiting to their vehicles, correct? Slight chance.
Slight chance.
Thank you.
Will there be places if someone drops a dog off and they can't pick it up immediately after the appointment is done, will there be a place like, I hate to use the word kennel or crate, but will there be a place for them to be?
Yes, the intention is that the animals will not interact with each other just for the safety standards of the business. So
Sure.
The one that is waiting to be picked up is going to be crated.
Be crated, okay. And but there could be the situation where there may be multiple dogs crated?
Should be no more than, well, one dog crated, one is being worked on.
Okay, so you don't foresee somebody, you don't foresee 2 dogs or 3 dogs being crated at any time?
The intention is not to have that happen.
I just know sometimes when you have grooming, if an owner can't pick the dog up immediately, sometimes it's there for 2 or 3 hours. So if you have another dog coming in, that's where I'm going with this 3-dog situation.
Yes,
Something to
so
think
if-
about. Something to
Potentially,
think about.
if there is something like that happening, the animals that are waiting to be picked up are going to be crated. So potentially 2 crates,
Okay,
maybe. If it's the same family, 2 animals per family, and they're both waiting to be picked up, both animals would be crated.
And will they be separate rooms, or will they be together? Will the crates be?
Separate crates.
Separate crates, I get that part, but will there some sort of barrier between the crates? Because I know sometimes in the situation with dogs, you put them in crates next to each other, and they see each other, there may be some of this yapping, going back and forth and such. So I'm just, again, with the good neighbor standards and the barking, I just would hate to see something escalate if there was a situation where you had multiple dogs there.
We do plan to have a small fence separating the receiving area from the area where the dogs are going to be worked on. So there's potential to separate the crates so the dogs are not in direct proximity of each other.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Jeff?
So just for clarification, these crates and this fence from receiving and discharging, this is all interior to the building, right? They're pretty much exiting the vehicle, so any dogs that might be barking between crates would be inside.
So inside, so with the decibels of barking and the walls muting, that shouldn't really create any noise concern for the neighbors, given that there is a garage, that there is a lot of noise coming from sometimes.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional thoughts or questions? So, Jeff, you mentioned a condition of hours of operation. Was that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? So that's a little bit beyond your proposed 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But that's
I'm in agreement with that,
sure.
yeah.
Okay. Any other, Jeff?
If it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, before I would make a formal motion for an additional condition, I think it's appropriate we I move to open the public hearing for 134 Flag Pond Road.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We will collect all comments and address them at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no members of the public wishing to speak, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Matt. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, back to board discussion. Any final thoughts or questions? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I move to add condition of approval number 8 to read that no dogs shall be dropped off or picked up prior to 7 a.m. or after 7 p.m., and those shall be considered the operating hours, and no exterior holding of animals. Is that appropriate? I mean, yeah, I mean, no kenneling, no outside run. All animals are stored within our facility, so.
All right, thank you for the motion.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce. Any additional discussion on that motion? Is it possible, Emily or Shannon, that you've captured that motion as a draft that we can just review real quick?
Jeff stated that he moves to add conditional number 8 to read that no dog shall be dropped off or picked up prior to 7 a.m. or after 7 p.m., and those shall be considered the operating hours, and no exterior holding of animals such as kenneling or outside run.
Jeff? Thank you, Lisa. Are those in favor? Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt condition of approval number 8 as discussed.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of fact as presented.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
And Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the conditions of approval as amended.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the conditions of approval as amended.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the application for conditional use review for home occupation for 134 Flag Pond Road, map 76, lot 12-1.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure, we'll take a 5-minute recess. All right. Good evening, everyone. We will continue with our agenda items this evening. Our next item is number 6F, and this is for Big Buck Lane. This is map 98, lot 0730, lot 34-16. And this is a public hearing and continued application review for a conditional use for a child care facility in the West Residential Zoning District. Shannon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this application for a child care facility small was previously reviewed during the October 1st Planning Board meeting, where the board found the application complete. During that meeting, there were a couple of staff comments that still needed to be reviewed, including the exploration of the egress through the existing garage. So in the interim between last meeting and this meeting, the code enforcement director, the deputy fire chief, and myself went on site to discuss with the applicant the options for providing 2 egresses from the child care facility. So as a reminder, this child care facility is within the basement of the existing residential home. There is no interior staircase from the residential home to this basement. The main entrance is through the garage and down a couple of steps to the entrance to this section of the house. So there is a requirement to have 2 different egress points in case of fire. And what the applicant has agreed to do is to create a wall that separates the garage from the entrance to the child care facility, which basically meets the city code for creating a separate egress. So the 2 egress points for the business would be through the dog shed into the backyard, would be the emergency egress, and the primary egress would be through the hallway that leads directly outside, the hallway that they've created by installing this wall. So those are things that would meet our city code. And there was also a condition of approval that was added to this application that basically states that any other requirements required by the fire marshal would also have to be adhered to. So after, if the board so chooses to approve this application, there is still a fire marshal visit that will have to happen, which is just an added layer of ensuring the safety of this business. One of the other things that happened in the interim was we got back the traffic peer review for this project, in which there were no high crash locations found in the area. Our traffic peer reviewer did request that sight lines from the driveway be confirmed. So the city engineer went out to confirm the sight lines, and his one request was that some of the low-hanging tree branches so if you're leaving the site, to the right of the driveway be trimmed back. And the applicant was also amenable to this condition that was also added to the draft conditions of approval for tonight. And the applicants are here, so if you have any questions for them, feel free. And I'm happy to provide any clarity you might need.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at this moment? All right, and with that, we'll ask if the applicant wants to add anything to that, or no? All right, any? Any thoughts from board members at this moment?
Mr. Chair, I noticed you still have a pool at your location, at your house?
Yes,
Okay. It looks like it's an above ground.
yes,
Are there gates on the entrance?
it's all gated.
Okay. Thank you.
Always been,
Thank you.
and logs.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any other thoughts from board members? So Shannon, real briefly, the wall you're talking about, everything's internal, all that discussion was for internal adjustments and circulation?
Yes.
Okay.
So, well, not quite. I mean, the wall is internal, yes. So, let me see if I can pull up the previous layout. But hold on one moment. I'll just bring it up. Oh, here it is. Yes. So, the green section of this drawing is the existing garage. The door closest to, it says furnace room storage area. So that door through the green space is where they are creating a wall. So the wall is going to be between the door and the OH or overhead garage door. And then it'll separate those two spaces completely. Then the entrance, some other things that we actually discussed while we were on site that I forgot to mention at the beginning is this sleeping room over here. It says door there, but there's actually no door there. So according to code, they wouldn't be allowed to have a door there because there's no egress window. But while we were there, we were able to see that that is actually an open space that also has a little window next to the closet where you can basically peek in to look at the kids as they're sleeping to make sure everybody's okay. But yeah, so internally the only change is the door, and then externally the only change is the trimming back of some of the growth along the driveway. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions, comments from board members?
Right, so I guess just to clarify, that's the yellow room, it's a doorway as opposed to a door,
Yes, exactly.
which I imagine the fire marshal is, that's on their checklist also.
Yes, if there had been a door there, the fire marshal would have requested it to be removed. But our director of code enforcement, that was one of the things that he checked on the way through the interior just to get ahead of it. And yeah, we realized that that was not an issue.
Great, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We will collect comments or questions and respond accordingly at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to close the public hearing. Back to board discussion. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just kind of in all fairness, are there limits of hours that you intend to limit people dropping off the children and times they must pick them up by the end of the day?
Yep. My hours are 7 to 4:30.
So very similarly, would you be opposed to a condition of approval that had operating hours spelled out between 7 and 7 a.m., 7 p.m.? So that just to give some protection for your neighbors. I noticed it was nice you had a neighbor, Mr. Brockway, who wrote an email in support of your operation, but you know, if there were other close-by neighbors that were concerned about people dropping off children at 5:30 or 6:45, do you have any opposition to a condition that would limit your drop-off time?
It's fine if you want to put something in there, but I'm not going to have kids after until 7 p.m. But yes, whatever.
Something as a board, I think we should try to put something in there as well. Or do we just put it that, you know, those were her oral comments, and then the condition of approval ceases when she stops operating it. So if she were to sell her house and somebody were to operate the daycare, they would have to come back and reapply.
No child can be left in daycare more than 10 hours a day. That's by the state. So you can say 7 to 7, but
I'm not trying to limit or negate that.
Requiring her to be.
I'm just saying, in respect for your neighbors, you are asking for a conditional use in a
Right.
residential neighborhood.
right.
And I know there are many of them throughout the town, but some daycares do open much earlier. And you're in agreement that 7 a.m. is as early as you want to operate. And I just think as a board, that falls very much in line with our existing zoning.
Right.
I just think it'd be a good precedence or procedure for us to put a condition in there so that we offer some of your neighbors protection. I was just trying to give you extra on the tail end. If you wanted to move it up to 5:30, that's fine, because there might be somebody that would want to be a kind of a shoulder between shifts and drop their child off at 10 or noontime, and you watched them until 5:30. I don't know. I just want to give you some flexibility, but at the same time be respectful of your neighbors.
Yep.
I'm wondering about changing this to say hours of operation are limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Because business shall operate between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. makes it look like you're required to operate between 7 and 7, and I know that's not what you're getting at here. But the hours of operation are limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. I assume you're not working weekends, too.
No.
So Jeff, is that an official motion?
Well, I think it's important. I was hoping to get a little feedback from other members of the board. I just think it's important that we try to protect the citizens in place. So I'm leaning that way, and if there was...
It's fine with me. You can put it in.
It's reasonable to have some sort of operating hours restriction, so I support that, what Jeff is saying.
Any other board member thoughts?
Yeah, especially since the applicant readily agrees.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to add condition of approval number 11, stating that the hours of operation of the child care Facilities shall be limited to 7 a.m. through 7 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to add item number 11 to conditions of approval as discussed?
Mr. Chair, not to put Joyce on the spot, but the word doctoring, is shall too restrictive? Does that allow her to decrease the hours if she wanted to run from 8 to 5?
Oh, I think so. This says shall be limited to, but, which means she can't expand beyond that 12-hour period, but she could certainly shorten up her own hours of operation,
Okay.
I think.
Well, it's just, in my world, shalls are very powerful, and so if
Yeah.
you're okay with that, then yes.
Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to add condition number 11 as discussed.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of fact as drafted.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
Second.
Second by Matt, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the draft findings of fact as presented? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft conditions of approval as amended this evening.
Thank you for the
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Matt. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the conditions of approval as amended.
Hope I get this one. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the conditional use review for 4 Big Buck Lane, map 98, lot 34-16.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6G. This is 66 Hill Street, map 52, lot 70, and this is a public hearing and continued application review for a conditional use application for a home occupation of a single-chair hair salon in the high-density residential zoning district. Shannon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So since we last spoke about this conditional use application, the applicant has updated her sketch showing the customer parking within the existing driveway on the left side of the building. When we were originally reviewing this application, she had proposed that the parking be on the right side of the building. There was some discussion about the ability of people to access that and how would they access that. So in order to negate some of those concerns, the parking has just been transitioned over to the more clearly defined parking area on site. As such, the walkway has also switched to the other side of the building to clearly bring you around the back to the entrance to the salon. And along the way, 2 new lights have been proposed. The cut sheets for those lights have been included in this application packet. And those lights are motion sensor lights, which are dimmable, and have full shields and also are LED compatible. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at the moment? And with us, the applicant is with us this evening. If there's anything you'd like to add? No. All right, thank you. Any questions, board members, on the revised parking or the light fixtures? All right, so we found the application complete at our October 1st meeting. This is a public hearing. No additional outstanding questions from staff. Some correspondences in our packet from one abutter. Any other thoughts or concerns?
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Matt. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We will collect comments and address them at the conclusion as necessary.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward for the public hearing, I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
Second.
Second by Matt, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to close the public hearing. Back to board discussion. Remaining thoughts, questions, concerns? Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to say that I think it works. It flows much better. It's very clearly defined with the parking space and the existing driveway that's, evidently very clearly in her control. And then with the existing lights or one light and the one that she's adding for egress, I think it'll work quite well from this side, and it really resolved a lot of the questions that I had about, right and access to that right side parking lot or parking space. So I don't see any problems, but of course, in fairness and uniformity, I think it's important that we kind of just talk about some hours of operation. If we could include something there to protect your neighbors as well. So if you could give that a little thought and give us a little feedback. I thought it was orally written in the application before, but I'd just like to make it a little tighter by it being a condition of approval.
So within our packet, there's a note in there of a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, with potential Saturday morning service as well, along with flexibility based on demand, I suspect, for weddings or special occasions on weekends, I suspect. So Jeffrey, are you thinking a specific time frame similar to some other applications we've reviewed?
Yes, I would, and I was just hoping that the applicant might give us a little feedback. Like Joyce, I seem to remember it in last week's packet. I didn't see it this time.
It talks about, as you just read, Matt, the proposed salon hours. It doesn't, the language doesn't necessarily restrict hours of operation, but it's, proposed, a draft findings of fact 11 sub 5. So it's on page 2 of the findings of fact and conditions of approval. Proposed salon hours will be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, with the potential for Saturday morning services when needed. Salon will serve one client at a time.
If I may, I think I wasn't really set on hours as of yet, but if it's important that we set them, we can definitely do that today. I assume that Saturday mornings will be something that I will use. And usually 9 to 5, I say, but occasional client, if needed after work hours, like 6 o'clock, that probably would be something that happens. So now that, as I'm thinking, to set something 7 to 7 like you did to the previous applicant, that would be perfectly fine with what I intend to do.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, even if we just amend that number 5, that, in no case shall exceed or operate outside the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday.
That's perfect.
We'll have her intended hours listed in the condition of approval, and we'll set a maximum.
So that, you're thinking that's an amendment to condition of approval 5, you said?
It's 11 sub 5.
Oh, I see, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll make a motion that we amend the draft finding of fact, condition number 11, paragraph 5, to continue or to edit after the proposed salon hours will be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, with a potential for Saturday morning services when needed, and will add, in no case shall operations take place outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. I think Lisa's capturing that for us to confirm. Any additional discussion? So, motion been made and seconded to adjust finding of fact item 11.5 to include verbiage that hours of operation should not go beyond 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Jeff Brochu moves to amend the draft finding of fact, condition number 11, paragraph 5, to edit after proposed salon hours, that in no case shall operations take place outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, second by Joyce Leary Clark.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Any additional thoughts from board members?
I'd just like to comment on the feedback from one of the neighbors, you know, recognizing the fact that one of the neighbors did speak up and object, but didn't give any support as to what the issue with the proposed business was. So I would say, I guess, you know, just to acknowledge the fact that, yes, we received it and heard the concerns, but at least for me, it seems like the impact of this home occupation is going to be unnoticeable to the neighbors. This is one person at a time coming in a back entrance for salon services. I can't see that there's going to be traffic and noise and any sort of detrimental impact to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other board member thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of facts.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce. Any discussion on the motion to adopt the findings of fact as amended this evening? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft conditions of approval as presented.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
Second.
Second by Matt. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the conditions of approval as drafted.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the application for conditional use review for home occupation for 66 Hill Street, map 52, lot 70.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yep.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6F, and this is a application of completeness review for 195 residential dwelling units and a proposal in a mix of single-family duplexes and multifamily buildings with associated site improvements. This is within the Park North contract zone and Portland Road zoning district, and this is presented by Saco Technics and Park North. Back to Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I trust you read my memo there. It goes through the mix of residential lots, duplex buildings, townhouse condo buildings, apartment buildings. We're presenting this to you this evening because it is a subdivision review, a subdivision amendment, actually. So it does require preliminary and final review. Under our subdivision standards, we have to review it on your schedule within 30 days. We are about 32 days from the application receipt, but I checked with the applicant and they were okay with that, so we are well within the required timelines and provisions to be reviewing this. Moving forward, I think it's going to be important to note that there is a previous approval on file as part of the full Cascade and Park North subdivision project for 200 residential units, mostly in multifamily and duplex style buildings. From when Park North and Cascade was originally approved. So it was anticipated that we would have about 200 units in the rear land. A lot of the the roadway infrastructure is somewhat similar to that original approval to what you see in front of you tonight. Single-family house lots are incorporated here. Looks like a little bit of a change, but other than that, there was always a consideration of this around this number of units in the back there, residential units. So just want to make sure that's clear for the board. What's interesting too is the applicant is asking for the board to consider a substantial phasing plan so that sections of this can be done and reviewed more localized. So when multifamily structures come in, he wants to bring those back and do the landscaping and the lighting and everything and the design review for each multifamily structure separately, kind of like what we're doing on the Aroma Joe's to some extent. So that's part of this request. The other part of the phasing is to bring in a connection for Waterfall to connect it into Cascade as part of phase 1 of any roadway infrastructure work that will be done. So that is important to note as well, because I think getting a connector road has always been a goal for that project. And I'll let the applicant give you more details on anything, but that's where we are as staff. So when we reviewed this checklist, we had an understanding that there was already some approval on file, and we also had the understanding that a lot of what happens in Park North gets re-reviewed under a site plan in more detail as we move forward. So that's just some theory from our perspective. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions at this moment for Emily? Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I had picked up on that, the State of Maine Environmental Protection letter with the 200 units, and I didn't get the sense that it was for the back lot. And I was just kind of curious as to, if that was for the entire site, then we've already well exceeded 200 residential units in some of the build-out. So I was just, want to make sure that as we kind of delegate some of the responsibilities from the planning board out, that the, long-range planning committee and, because that area is ear noted in the new comprehensive plan as a mixed-use development. And it seems like the contract zone was always called for mixed use, and we're really erring on the side of very heavily of residential. And I didn't know if if it was at the point where we should be asking the long-range planning committee to weigh in. Is this what they envisioned for that area, as well as council, really? Because if our goal, the town's goal, is really focused on residential growth, they're very much doing that. I mean, typically in an average year, we have a little over 300 building permits for residential units. So if they want to develop that heavily residentially, then he really meets that goal for the city, and it's a great opportunity. If it's not really what the council and long-range planning we're planning for that area, because the other goals in the comprehensive plan for walkability and kind of self-sustaining communities, I don't see that building out in this regard. So I just feel like I'm kind of stuck here in the middle of trying to look at the review of a plan. This is just it's a very major subdivision without any interior amenities to make it self-sufficient, to make it walkable, to make it some of the goals that are really laid out in our comprehensive plan. So that was just where I was, and I was just to circle back. I didn't see that environmental protection letter being specific to the rear section. I thought it was for the entire Park North parcel. So I guess I'll reread it and see if it makes it clear if it's for the rear section. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And with that, we have the applicant with us, if you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, planning board members, staff. My name's Elliot Chamberlain, owner of Park North Development. I've got Matt Orr from Saco Technics with me tonight. I really just wanted to start off with a high-level overview of the project, hit some more of the major points, and then Matt can get into a little bit more of the technical stuff. Although Emily did touch on a few of the issues I was going to touch on. I think, though, I'll start with Jeff's comment. This project is proceeding along exactly the way the contract zone was written. This area that we're speaking about tonight, which affectionately we'll call the rear land, it's the most easterly part of the overall site. And as Emily said, that had original approval for 200 units just for that section. Our contract zone is broken down. We actually set up our own zones, and we have areas, and within those areas it talked about the allowed uses, the densities, the heights, the setbacks, just like you do in your city zoning, to copy that as much as possible. In this particular zone, it called out for 301 units. The reason we had one was for the community center, which is currently in the process of being designed. We have 100 units in what I'll call phase one, the current residential section at the end of Waterfall Drive on the left, which is all the homes and condos, and then the 200 here. This 200 has now been reduced to 195. But like she said, that had the street network of that original plan is extremely similar to what you see on this plan. The difference was it was pretty much all duplex condos and townhome condos. We've now mixed it up, and according to your own comp plan, it calls for a variety of housing and projects. This is 195 total units. 79 of those are single family, and the 79 is broken down into some of those are front-loaded lots, your typical subdivision lot, and some of those are alleyway lots where you pull into the alleyway and you drive into the back of your house and there's no curb cut on the street. We have 48 apartments. Those are split down the middle, 24 townhomes, 24 flats. We have 24 townhome condos, and then we have 44 duplex condos. So you see there's a much larger variety of housing type and size than there was in the original plan. But like I said, this falls exactly in line with what our contract zone called for, and we're just following suit with that. Again, that was originally approved back in 2008 when we had that approval, and obviously we're just finally, after all these years, getting to that rear section. This will be on existing utilities, public water, public sewer, drainage, of course, to meet all the current guidelines. Our phase one, and Matt's going to show you a phasing plan tonight, but whatever phase one actually ends up being, it will include the connection to get out to Cascade Road. Even if it's only 5 houses in phase one, we're still going to build that connection so you'll be able to drive through from the end of Waterfall Drive as it currently sits all the way out to Cascade Road. She touched on a little bit of the site plan on when you get into landscaping and lighting on the multiplex buildings like for the apartments and the 24 townhome condos. Just like in the past, we're looking for an overall approval, and then when we go to do those multiplex sites within this overall approval, we would have to come back for an individual site plan and talk about all the details as you normally would in any site plan, specifically for those buildings. So anything with lighting, parking, plantings, buffers, anything like that on that particular site for those particular buildings. The lights and trees in the public roads, we sat with the city engineer the other day, and from what we're learning, the city is going through a new process with CMP, and we're no longer doing lights by meters. It's going to be a fixed price. So what we were told is go ahead and show the lights in the normal locations we would, and most likely he's going to adjust those or possibly increase those as he reviews the plan. Trees have always been the same in any subdivision. There's always a note on the plan that talks about at some point when we go to turn it over, the Parks and Rec director would come out and basically give us a map and say, I want these trees, this size, this species, and this is how many I want, and this is where I want them to go. Which is a good lead into, we are currently doing that exactly right now on Lodge Drive, Manita Drive, Quarry, Roaring Rock, Creek's Edge, and Waterfall. We are 95 to 98% done with trees. I was told got done today. We're almost done with the paving. We're working through as-built and legal work. So Emily told me today that there's a chance we may be on a meeting in November for the acceptance, beginning the process of the acceptance of those 5 roads, which us and a lot of people that live down there will be excited. Quickly to talk about the trips on the DOT permit. Obviously, when most of you know, I completely disagreed with what happened with Aroma Joe's. And we started to fight that battle, but made the decision to just move on. We have trips left in our permit, and the idea basically is phase 1 could be adjusted a little bit so that what I think is going to happen, and certainly Emily's staff can correct me, is we would look at a preliminary for the whole site and a final approval on just phase 1. And that phase 1 would be designed so that it would pretty much use up all the trips we have. I can tell you that we've already started the process with Saco Tech, the same company we've used for all the other DOT permits. Already engaged with them under contract to start the process for a new amended DOT permit. But because of the time of year, and I was told Monday we can't even do counts until probably next April or May, that most likely we're probably a year out from having a new in-place DOT permit. But that would at least allow us to get the items that are before you, not just for this phase 1, the office building that you're going to see very quickly in a couple of meetings, and possibly somebody else that's doing something on Eastview Parkway. So we're trying to accommodate everybody and use my phase 1 here as we can make it bigger or make it smaller so that we don't go over the allowed trips that we have left in our current DOT permit. Yeah, so that's really a general overview. Certainly, if you have any questions for things I've talked about, I'd be more than happy to answer those. If not, then I'll let Rick get up and get into a little bit greater detail about the site.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Matthew Orr, civil engineer with Saco Technics. As Elliot mentioned, I'll be diving into a little bit more of the technical details for the presentation that we're giving you this evening. So, as Elliot mentioned, this project will extend what is currently Waterfall Drive to make the connection over to Cascade Road, as I get these plans pulled up. So this is a rough outline of the phasing of what would be looking for, but primarily phase one, as Elliot mentioned, would make the connection, which is in yellow on the screen, all the way from where Waterfall ends just past the pump station all the way through and make the connection to the other side. With that, the total roadway on that waterfall extension is approximately 3,800 linear feet. The other main road, which in the plan set we label as Road B, which loops around and up and through to the cul-de-sac here, is approximately another 3,400 linear feet. B lane, which is just a short segment here, which ends in the cul-de-sac, is a little over 1,000 feet. And then there is one alleyway right in the middle here, and that is approximately 900 feet. So the reason for the phasing is there is a substantial amount of infrastructure that needs to go in place here. As Elliot mentioned, there's public water and sewer that has been extended to the limits of development on each side. The sewer, for the most part, the main line run is in place and installed, and all flows back towards the pump station. But there will be still some sewer that needs to be extended to the far reaches of where the development is being proposed. Water main, there's 8-inch water main out there currently that is proposed to be extended throughout the entirety of the development. And then, of course, underground electrical services as well. With this, all the new impervious surfaces, it was requested that we add in total coverage of buildings and impervious surfaces. So that table is now on sheet C101, which was included with some after-the-fact materials that were submitted, as well as the plan set was mistakenly sent along last week prior to stamp being on those. So those have now been stamped by a professional engineer and were also included with your after-the-fact packet. So with the total impervious area on the site, we are looking at approximately 18.2 acres. And this is roughly 20% of the entire rear land that is remaining to be developed. The treatment for this area and all the developed areas, so all the landscaped and any lots, is by 2 central wet ponds that are in the middle of Road B and Waterfall Drive. And there is also an area that we have designated for future BMP to treat some of these multi-family developments that would come in the last phase. That's most likely to be either a smaller pond or some sort of under-drained soil filter, but that hasn't been fully designed at this time, and as Elliot mentioned, that would take place during most likely a site plan approval when those buildings do come forward. But with that in total, we are treating almost 99% of all the impervious surface that is being created by this project, the overall subdivision that is, and also, again, almost 99% of the developed areas associated with this overall subdivision.
So with that, I believe we'll turn it back over to you for any questions.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions at this moment for the applicant? There's a lot of information here.
Just a little bit.
You were all thinking it, I said it. This graphic image here is a great help. Do we have sort of a simplified summary of, like a written summary of the phases as well at this point yet? I know there's some discussion, and in your application materials, you talk about reviewing, the multifamilies and, sort of the different structures and the pieces and parts that go through, but the sort of a written narrative of the phases, I think, would help understand, kind of simplifying the overall big picture here. I guess right this second, I'm not thinking it needs to be overly specific in detail, but sort of hit some high-level points to sort of begin to game plan and understand sort of the scope of it. I mean, phasing it completely makes sense. You've got well over a mile of road or so that you need to build in there as well, so that's a time frame. And then I guess with that phasing, the anticipated time frame of it, and then sort of the like a construction management plan of how we're moving through those phases, and maybe your anticipated sales or turnover of some of that stuff. Just sort of, I guess my thought is just sort of some of this just big picture.
Yeah, we did, obviously this, the pretty colors you see up there, obviously there was some thought behind why we doing this section first and this section second and so on and so forth. So we can put that into words and then list what units are in each phase, why we're going to each phase at a particular time. Not that we have to follow in sequence, but this one, I most likely, I don't see this one going out of sequence. I think it will land 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of because we're going to ultimately get into a part of the project where we're going to be reviewing phase 3, 4, 5, and I would imagine you would want, some of these previous phases complete and occupied, and we're going to have discussions with those residents, and they're going to want to know what's going on. So sort of a way to, look back and say, well, we've talked about it, we've anticipated this, and this is how we've anticipated mitigating some of the concerns. And I mean, you've done this for a long time.
Oh yeah, no, one of the biggest concerns with this project, because the city has asked me multiple times to make sure the connection over to Cascade Road was included as part of phase 1. The tricky part is you go build a lot of units right on that road, and now those people have to live with construction traffic for the next 5 to 8, 9 years.
Right.
So we've tried to think of that, and that's why we've done the one in the middle, and then bounced over to the green, which would be phase 2, then over to the red, where you could do certain phases outside the main road.
Sure.
And then work our way, in the purple phase being the last one as you're working your way out, with trying to put as little impact as you can on as many residents as you can, knowing there's going to be people living there as you're still building out the entire section.
Sure, yeah. So that I mean, you said it exactly what I was thinking. Sort of a way to verbalize this, the overall phasing and construction management plan of the project, and the sequencing is X, Y, Z sort of thing. Just that way, something we can just reference, and knowing that this is going to take some significant time, that it without having a document or, you know, talking more about it, I mean, it's going to be fluid, I suspect.
Yes.
I mean, it's,
Yep.
so sort of building it and anticipating it in such a way. That's all. That's sort of my first thought here, I think.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be phased, and that's how we should approach it. And from there, just understanding, just creating a, you know, a starting point is all for discussion. But that's sort of my first thought right now. Any other, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I look at it, and there's a lot to digest, a lot of material here. It's hard to kind of go through each one of the pages and figure out where they're lining up on the match lines. But just kind of from a very high-profile view here, looking at this, I'm just wondering how the applicant feels that it meets our comprehensive plan for the corridor transformation. Because I read the corridor transformation plan, and I go, how does anybody achieve what we wrote? And so it calls out the Portland Road as this corridor is identified as a potential rapid transit corridor for the regional long-range transit plan. The Eastern Trail already provides an amenity to build around and another alternative transportation route. Redevelopment of existing sites should be prioritized over greenfield development. Future planning should allow densities which supports transit use and considers a network of secondary streets will need to be provided, will be needed to provide a walkable block structure off of Portland Road. When I hit that point, I'm trying to see how this would be necessarily walkable. And then it continues on that opportunities for future connections across parcels should be preserved. Large blocks of undeveloped natural habitat sensitive to areas like Goosefair Brook, Cascade Brook, and Millbrook should be preserved as neighborhood amenities. And so I think it was great we put all that out there. And how do you achieve many of those things in this? And I guess the one that I see, I mean, I think you're working around the geography that's there, is are there provisions being left in there for connectability to adjacent lots, so that when you buy the next phase and you're building off of the Park North property, will it be able to tie in cohesively to this?
The land that abuts us to the east or towards Old Orchard is all owned by the state of Maine and completely wet. There's nothing, and then you hit Milliken Mills Road. So there's nothing there to connect to, or nobody would ever spend the money or do a wetland fill of that magnitude. I mean, it's a pretty massive piece of land. So that's just probably what I would consider an unbuildable piece of land. There's natural obstacles that stop us from connecting to, I'm trying to think of a piece, the Hale trailer piece. Certainly not something we would want connected to our project. You look to the north, you've got one owner being Maine National Guard that owns everything down one side. And then you've got the Cascade Brook that on the lower left-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner are sensitive areas. So there's really nothing else to connect to when you look at this site. As far as walkability, you can start on Route 1 and walk completely through this entire site. On top of that, we have trails, and they get used every day, mostly by people that live in the neighborhood, and I've seen people that don't live in the neighborhood. But you'll be able to walk from Route 1 completely through the neighborhood, through multiple streets, and come out onto Cascade Road, and eventually do that, just one very large loop, all up to Route 1 and then back to Route 1 again at the beginning of the site. So I think we do everything you just stated. I think, and maybe it's a matter of opinion, of course mine's biased, but is that it does meet all those goals. And there again, where we're under a contract zone, does that change anything? I don't know. It's basically, we're following suit with what the original contract zone accounted for. Actually, I think we reduced the residential, because if you go back to the original contract zone, it said we can go up to 60 feet up in the commercial area, and we could have a mixed-use building. So you could do a first floor all business, 5 floors of residential. Well, over that 15 acres, I could have put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units up in that area. Well, it became very clear no non-residential use wanted to be off Route 1. They all want the exposure of Route 1, either where we are, where Ziggy's is, where Waterfall connects to Route 1, or down by Cascade and Route 1. And as you've seen, that has sprouted, there's 3 or 4 businesses there now. And there's still 2 or 3 parcels left over. You're going to see in a couple of weeks, we've got an 8,000 square foot office coming in front of you up in the commercial area. We are now in the process of trying to create a Cascade Village, if you will, right behind Ziggy's. That will, I can't remember how many thousands of square feet, all non-residential. But once you get a certain distance back, you couldn't give away free space for anybody to put their business back there, whether it was selling ice cream or an office space or recreation or whatever it may be. We do have a recreational center that's currently being designed and amenities being planned that is going to go where it originally was planned, which is right at the roundabout on some land that wasn't going to get used. And that will be big enough to service, and the amenities enough to service the entire build-out of the entire neighborhood. So I do think we accomplish a lot of those goals, and at the same time following suit with the original contract zone and not looking, to try to put industrial or commercial or uses way out in the back, where we have a lot more of the ravines and the streams and the Cascade Brook and the waterfalls. So that would be tough to put anything but residential back there.
Thank you. I think, Elliot, with that, if I haven't asked before, and maybe I've just thought about it, I think it would help the board. I think it would be good to get a full, it can be graphic and simple, but sort of a full zone, like a snapshot of where it's at now, sort of residential.
The entire project?
Yeah, the entire
Yep.
Cascade Park North.
That's easy enough to do. Yep.
Just to say everything in red is a business use, everything in blue is residential, and just sort of kind of where we're at now, and if it's information that you can share with the board, any sort of projects that are in development of something like that. I think I don't want to be hyper focused on some of the areas, but look at the overall big project. A lot's happened over quite some time here, and I think being able to understand and grasp all the relationships between the pieces and parts.
No, that's easy.
I think that would.
Yeah, we can
help
do a colored map of the entire. I think it was roughly 300 and something acres, and do a written, draft of what do all those colors mean, what do they represent.
Sure, and just simple, high level, just to kind of get a big picture, because I know it's fluid, the economy's fluid, design's fluid. It's all, we have the concept, and Jeff is correct, and how do we evaluate the comp plan from where it was when you started the project, where we're at now, how the zoning, there's all sort of these moving
I know
parts.
we're at our third underlying zone.
Yeah, it's,
since we started out.
It's very interesting. So, I think that'd be a good sort of graphic to reference back and just sort of look at and see where we're at. But
not a problem.
I think we're starting to get there. Emily, you can tell me to stop at any point, but Jeff, we do have a meeting with long-range planning coming up here next week, and we also have a joint meeting that got rescheduled for the 28th with City Council as well. So I think those are two opportunities to, with those bodies, sort of mention, development interest, stuff is happening out there. So just to kind of update those bodies and get some feedback, and we could have that information for our next meeting and discuss on this project. I think that'd be good for everybody. But
Mr. Chair, yeah, we can work on like an update of Portland Road holistically. I'd just be cautious about focusing on one project.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Just high level, big picture. Yep. Any other board member thoughts on what we have before us this evening?
I guess, Mr. Chair, I'd just comment that, yeah, I mean, it seems like this is really exactly the sort of uses that were anticipated when the contract zone was initially put together. I mean, anything past, 600 feet from Portland Road?
Yeah, that's
was always going to be residential.
Right. The area you're talking about is, I think it's phase 1 as it's listed in the contract zone. That was where Ziggy's is and the bank is, and that's about 1,000 feet deep. And when we came to the conclusion that businesses just didn't want to be back that far, we said, okay, we'll give up all residential on the first 600 feet if we can make the last 600 to 1,000 on those two parcels between Route 1 and Don Marie Drive, all residential. Because even at the time, when we tried to get an explanation of what mixed use meant, nobody really knew. Did that mean 2% had to be non-residential and 98% residential, or was it 50-50? That was
all first floor.
Or first floor and the rest.
Somebody had mentioned that at one point.
Yeah,
and Main Street, certainly.
And that never got resolved. What ended up resolving it was we said, okay, let's take all residential out of the first 600 feet and then no commercial for after that. So that means, I guess it doesn't stop there. I guess you'd go all the way to the back of the property, meaning no commercial, after 601, all the way to the Old Orchard line, I assume is what that would end up meaning. But
based on lack of demand.
yeah, in this particular piece is, I think, I know phase wasn't the correct word, but it's section 4 of phase 4 in the contract zone. So if you go to look up that contract zone, the Park North contract zone, because there's two of them, remember, one for down where Hancock is and one for the area we're talking about. This is section 4, and this is, if you look it up, it says 301 units, and this is exactly, the street layout is almost exactly what it was back in '08.
Mr. Chair, may I share something from a previous Park North review?
Sure.
Matt, can you just click the button for me? I refer to this document a lot, which is in our records from a previous review, and maybe this is something we can ask Sebago to update for us, but what Elliot's referring to here and Sebago is referring to is Park North Contract Zone Parcel 4. And parcel is with a capital P, the way it's worded in the contract zone documentation. So changes to the parcels with a capital P require additional review by a level above the planning board. So right now, he's falling within the parameters as far as we can see the review we've done so far. And again, it's application completeness review, so we haven't done the full review. But as far as what we can see so far is they're complying with the parameters of what is labeled as the Park North Contract Zone Parcel 4, that red piece. And we have two contract zones out here. So the one that was mentioned before was Cascade. That's on the left side of this screen. That's where Aroma Joe's was. And then the other contract zone is called the Park North Contract Zone, and it's broken up into these parcels accordingly. And when you get farther back into the property, it becomes more of a residential types of uses that are written into that contract zone. When you get toward the top of the property in parcel 1 and in parcel 2, it's more of commercial type uses. So I think it would be maybe appropriate that staff just ask Sebago to update this, because like we can see Eastview Parkway, I think, is a little different than how it's shown on here now. So, but this is something we refer to, and the parcel lines, as far as I know, have not changed to where these parcels sit with the contract zone. Again, capital P, not a small parcel as in a lot, but as in this chunk called parcel with a capital P.
Yeah, no, this is a big help. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, just in terms of taking bite-sized pieces of this, I mean, there's a waiver request regarding having a neighborhood meeting within 6 months. And then applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting January 9th. I would move to waive the requirement for a neighborhood meeting within 6 months of the application, given the fact that the neighborhood meeting has already been held.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn.
So, Mr. Chair, if I'm for
Yes.
discussion, that neighborhood meeting on January, that was actually for the apartment complex, though, wasn't it? It would have been, it was advertised for this, okay.
Mr. Chair, if I can just clarify that.
Sure.
The applicant came to staff and asked to present all the housing at one time so that he would be more upfront with how much housing he was presenting. And he presented both projects at that neighborhood meeting that staff attended. So we attended it, it was advertised as both, and we heard about both projects.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of waiving the neighborhood meeting requirement? Matt?
Yes. Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. With our notes in here from our staff memo, it also discusses a site walk. How do board members feel about a site walk?
I think it would be interesting to go back down there. It seems like it changes every time we go in.
I don't remember the last time I was there, so.
You don't go to Ziggy's enough.
There is a gravel road where the sewer system exists, so it's not a walk through the woods. You've got a nice gravel road to go from Cascade all the way to
Sure.
all the way to the pump station.
I would support a site walk.
I definitely think it's important. It's one of the bigger projects out there. We'd be doing an injustice not doing a site
Yeah.
walk.
So, I guess, Emily, a site walk for this particular one, I think I'd like to give ourselves a little bit more time than normal, so I don't know if I'd propose that this one is, given how dark it's starting to get, I don't know if I'd propose that this one happens right before a meeting. Perhaps this one is on an off week or whatnot, and maybe we hit it a little bit earlier, 4:30 or so. I'm not sure if board members have their schedule before them now, and if you have availability now, Emily, we could choose a date, but I guess to start the discussion, perhaps it's on an off Tuesday, if that works for board members.
We don't have a meeting on the 29th, correct?
Correct.
Is our next meeting November 12th or
Correct.
19th? 12th.
Correct, 12.
I mean, I can't do next Tuesday, the 22nd, unless we did it after like 5:15, so seems like that wouldn't give us time if it was getting dark. But majority rules.
I think we're having some deliberations there. As a reminder, we have November meetings, we have 12th and 19th. Those are 2 consecutive weeks.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
November 4th may be an option, which is a Monday night.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know, if 4 o'clock, it's probably going to be getting dark pretty soon.
I could do a November 4th at 4 o'clock.
I can too.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah. So we just drive till we hit gravel?
Does that work for the applicant, for you guys? Okay. And Jeff is triple checking his schedule. 4 o'clock. All right, let's schedule that for November 4th at 4 o'clock.
Might be getting dark.
Did you want us to invite the conservation commissioners?
I think on this one, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
There's conservation land to the west of Phase 5, right? Did I see that in the contract zone map that you showed us before, Matt?
Yeah, there was 2 pieces that, working with Emily over the last couple of years, cleaning up a lot of loose ends, and that was one of them, where it had originally called for us to donate that and turn it over to the city, and we've done that.
And then the hiking, and we'll be able to see the hiking trails, I suppose. They don't have to be marked because they already exist, right?
Yes, you'll see one that we have right off of Waterfall Drive that ends up in this section. So you'll see that. And there happens to also be on land we don't own by the cell tower, there's other existing trails that take you down to the waterfall.
Great, thank you.
I guess with that, are there certain items that the board would want staked out prior to the site walk? Like major intersections or?
Major intersections, and then I think a reference to some of the phasing. I mean, I think if we have the major intersections staked out and we have this graphic here, I think we can start to begin to see, as the road develops, as we progress through, sort of each phase. So as long as we can decipher and understand that information in those areas. I think that would be key. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I mean, that's also a very large site, so maybe if they did that, but it's worked well with a couple of the engineers that have their GPS overlay on that site, so that they can just tell the group as we're walking, hey, we're at this site, and that way they don't have to go through and stake out all these different locations. I mean, if they maybe stake a couple, but I think if we could kind of have that aided type tour when we're walking as a group, and they just use their GPS overlay and say, okay, we're officially here at the roundabout, the Rotary, or I think that would be comparable. I don't know, maybe you could have 2 people there with those tablets or whatever, but whatever it is, I think that would be acceptable for me. I think it gives us a lot of detail. And it also helps when we have questions too. We might want to know the edge of the pond, and they weren't going to stake it. We can at least get a sense of where it is.
Yeah, that helped a lot with the Hale Trailer sidewalk because that was a big parcel.
Yep, that's fair. All right, any other board member thoughts, questions, concerns at this moment? So we've addressed the waiver, we've scheduled a site walk. Any questions, comments on the application materials?
Mr. Chair, I mean, there was a question on the application checklist about providing cost estimate documentation for the financial capacity letter. I guess I'm wondering, does that mean that we need that information before we can find the application complete, or is this something for a later meeting?
So those were notes that we had asked the applicant, and so one of the things we'd asked them was to update their financial capacity letter to include a cost estimate amount. And so they did give you the amount, they just didn't give you like a full cost estimate of how they came to that amount. Keep in mind that this is a partially developed and built out subdivision, so they have a good estimate of what the costs are for certain roadway lengths. So you can ask the applicant about any information with that. And you can determine if that's something that you need this evening, or if you're comfortable accepting it another evening, because this, again, this is considered a subdivision amendment.
And to back up her comment, she did ask us for that, and so what we did was take the lineal foot of road and just times it by an average lineal foot price for what we've been seeing in the last couple of years. Certainly, we're just starting to have contractors that are big enough to do this site work, start to look at this, and there's, as you can tell, there's a lot to look at. So, I mean, it's probably going to be a couple, 3 months before somebody can actually give me a true hard number. But, you know, using numbers we've been seeing in the last, couple of years, which is how we got to that number. So we're certainly right in the ballpark. We might be a little high, we might be a little low. And certainly as we go through this process, I wouldn't be shocked if there was a few things that changed that would affect the roadway as we go through approvals.
But is this the financial capacity letter just for the roadway? I mean, there's other infrastructure too.
Yeah, this is strictly for all the roads, all the public infrastructure, utilities, sewer, streetlights, trees, everything. A completed road ready to be turned over to the city of Saco. So yes, it would include all that, but certainly not site work for the individual homes or buildings, or, because those items don't go in the letter of credit anyways.
Sure. Yeah, just wasn't clear when you're talking about the road, you're not talking about just the road. You're talking about the road and everything around the road.
Yes, yes,
For all the phases.
yes. Right, I started with phase one, and then Emily quickly corrected me and said, no, we need the whole thing, so. But at this point, you gotta remember, there's 1,000 feet off Cascade Road that's already built. Not final paved, but it's 90% there. That pond's already done. Obviously, we're into it a little ways across the stream where the pump station is, so a little piece of that road is built. But I just literally added up all the lineal footage of public roadway that would go in the letter of credit, times it by an amount per foot that we've been seeing.
Yeah. So I think I guess for me, for this item, it including all the phases, I feel it's sufficient. As we start to develop, we might want to see something broken out per phase, or at least itemized per phase. But I think if it's, for this, if it includes all the phases.
Yes, and as we go through this process and start to make sure that if this is exactly the way it ends up, then yes, pretty soon we'll be able to give you a price per phase, per section of road, where it stops and starts,
Sure.
and get very, right down to the dollar.
Yep. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this one always comes up, but I guess I'll be the one to bring it. The one, there's a ton of material here, and I don't know if I'm ready to necessarily find it complete this evening. Particularly when we talk about the last one was the permits, right? The state and local permits, and you acknowledge you need a new TMP for this build-out. When you said phase one, the existing TMP, wasn't there, after the whole Aroma Joe's thing, like 5 counts left on the current TMP?
No. So we have a current scorecard going with staff and Diane, I can't remember her last name, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Brad from Sebago and Diane have basically come to an agreement after Aroma Joe's that says, okay, this is where we are. This is how many was in Elliott's permit. This is how many's been used right up to Aroma Joe's. So we knew exactly how many AM weekday, PM weekday, and Saturday morning of each one. The problem, PM is fine. We got plenty of trips there. It's the AM weekday and the AM Saturday because of Aroma Joe's that really reduce those numbers. So what we've done is Brad has said, okay, let's pretend the office building that you're about to see in probably sometime in November, what does that use? What does our phase one use? And I think there's 1 or 2 small items that 2 other people, lots that I sold, are trying to get going. So we're trying to accommodate them. So we took everything into consideration. And what I've done to make all that work is say, okay, if my phase one, if I wanted it to be that big, but we ran out of trips, we just got to reduce my phase one and make it so we almost get to 0 on one of those. Granted, we still need to meet with Diane to just walk through that. We have met once, and the general idea of it, she seemed to be on board. I'm not going to sit here and say, she's blessed it, but she's got to look at the daycare, because I'm not even sure if she's seen that yet. And we got to look at this phase one and go through her math. But looking in the past, Brad and her have come to an agreement that the scorecard we've been using is right to the trip. So they've both agreed on everything that's been built, the numbers, what we have left, where the permit started, where we are, what's been built, including the 90 apartments that we're just about to start here pretty soon. So the only thing that will change is the size of my phase one. And that's why, if I understood what staff and I kind of talked about for a process here, would be preliminary on, if you were to give preliminary on this whole thing tonight, but final only on phase one. And like I said earlier, phase one may only be 10 houses and a couple of condos to make the trips work in the current DOT permit. We're not, I did talk when we met Monday morning at Sebago. I did ask, what's the probability of going a little bit into the negative for a short period of time? And Brad basically said, that's probably never going to happen. So I said, okay, if we'll just have to play with our phase one to keep the 2 people I sold lots to, try to keep them happy, the office building in this phase one. And what happens is, realistically, we're probably not going to get approvals to move forward with this, February, March, sometime in there. There's going to be a lot of review on this. Let's assume it was March. I bet it's going to be 4 or 5 months for somebody like Gorham Sand to do enough of the road work for me to even start building any structure. So it would be probably into the beginning of, close to the end of 25 or beginning of 26 before I'd be looking for my very first CO on anything. At that point, I'd already have the new DOT permit, and because he's thinking it's going to be roughly a minimum of 9 months, probably a maximum of 12 months, which we've already started that process. So it should all work in theory, but all of a sudden, if somebody came along right now and said, Elliot, build me a brewery up on the commercial, I'd have to put them on hold until we had that new DOT permit, because nothing else, if we can make it work numbers-wise for our phase one, the office building, the 2 people on Eastview Parkway, and everything else that's already been taken into account, if I can make all that work, we're pretty much going to be down to 1 or 2 trips or 0 on one of those 3 trip categories, AM, PM, or Saturday. And I can tell you right now, the PM, we got plenty of trips. It's the AM and the Saturday, because of Aroma Joe's, that really put us in a bind. Hopefully I didn't drag that out for too long of an answer.
No, I mean, unfortunately, it's one of those ones that comes up all the time. It's a big concern from a lot of people in the area, and it seems like every time you bring a proposal before us, we're talking about the TMP, and I think we're all kind of tired of hearing it and the numbers, but we agree on something. It's obviously a really key, important piece of the puzzle. And the protection of our community, and as well as our comprehensive plan calls out that we're kind of setting the trend of reaching out to our other communities, and I know you've been paying impact fees to Scarborough.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, at what point is Scarborough looped into this conversation, right? Because this affects them as well.
Yeah, under the DOT permit, which spells out the payments to Scarborough, all it is at building permit for anything, you got to go pay it. So if nothing gets built, there are no impact fees. So that's kind of an easy one. The light at the top of Waterfall, that's kind of a separate issue. So I think we're going to move along. Obviously, what I don't know is, let's take worst case scenario. We never got another DOT permit. You'd have a phase one here. You would have the connection though, so now the project has the connection. We'd have a small phase, first phase here. Everything else that got approved would get built, and the commercial land would sit there, and the rest of this would sit there. Obviously, I'm not going to let that happen. So the only thing that changes is, what are the impacts out of that DOT permit? We've had great conversations with Sebago, and they're all looking at it going, I don't know what else you do to Route 1. Do they make you put money towards a bad intersection further down the line? Maybe. Do they make you pay some fee? Maybe. I'm not sure physically what other construction you would do. You're not going to add a 5th lane down Route 1.
Sure. I mean, and I get it because it's part of your business, but it's part of our role to be advocating and asking some of these questions. And like I said, the comprehensive plan, just rewind the tape a little while, right? When we as a community have been looking at what's going on across the river in Biddeford and how that's affecting us, right? And, you know, it just doesn't feel like there's much conversation. And I brought that up because it is in our comprehensive plan that we are supposed to be reaching out and consulting, talking to our neighboring communities. And I respect, and I think it's great that the DOT has you paying impact fees, but we all know that Route 1, once you go into Scarborough, is kind of like on a chokehold. All of a sudden, our wide Route 1 that we're fortunate to have in Saco, you instantly cross that town line and it's on a serious diet, right? It's tight going through there with any sort of vehicle. And, you know, how does this sort of development, how do they view that and how it affects them? And granted, they're not governing what happens in our community, but we're supposed to be good stewards and having that conversation. We haven't had anything.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know when we apply to DOT, do they call Scarborough? I don't know. Emily might know better than me.
I can answer some of these questions.
Yeah,
Mr.
that'd be
Chair.
great, Emily, thank you.
Yep, they called Scarborough. That's how Scarborough got back involved for the payment of the traffic impact fees and went through the formula of how they were going to work. And Scarborough was notified, just like we're notified of different TMPs. Like, for instance, years ago, we were notified of the Downs TMP, and we were offered to go to some of those virtual meetings as staff and offer some professional input based on what we were seeing. As far as the Park North TMP, I sent everything I had about it over to their planning director, so she was up to speed about it because she had a new planning director since the previous one had moved on to a different role. So we got on the same page about that. And then we always coordinate when the impact fees are to be paid. Before the pre-con meeting, we'll coordinate how they're going to be paid and how they're going to be tracked based on the existing development. When Elliott comes in with a new TMP to the DOT, I'm sure Scarborough will be notified again. If they're not notified, we'll be reaching out to let them know anyway.
And that was what I believe, and obviously Emily can attest to this if I'm accurate, that was the reason for only giving preliminary on the whole thing and final just on phase 1, in case the DOT permit took a lot longer. So you're not giving final approval on anything that didn't have a TRIPS accounted for in a current TMP permit.
So, Mr. Chair, can I just add some info to that? Can you just click the button there again? So Elliott came to me, went back in January of 2000, whenever he did his neighborhood meeting, with both of these, the 90 unit and this 195 proposal. Obviously, you've already reviewed the 90 unit. Around the time after Aroma Joe's got decided, Elliott came back and asked how he could bring this forward to make it clear that he was looking to get the whole proposal, because originally I told him just bring forward only what you have allotted trips for within your traffic movement permit left. And he said that's really not going to be, it's really going to be difficult because of how he's designing the site and looking to do phasing. So when I reviewed the ordinance, there is a section that talks specifically about submittal of the final plan application requires the Department of Transportation traffic movement permit. And that is how I said the only way we could possibly to support something like this is if you bring forward everything through preliminary so we can see the full build out of what you're looking for. Otherwise, the board would be looking at pieces of utilities that would not be super clear of where things were going. And then we would need to make sure that whatever is happening has the correct allotted trips left and do our peer review of it and make sure that both Sebago has done their review, we've done our review, and make sure that there's enough trips for that within the TMP, or you don't review the final subdivision review until that TMP is issued.
And along with that, and she's right, we met a long time ago, and when you look at it from Joe's point of view, the city engineer and Sebago, designing it in piecemeals is never good, or reviewing it in piecemeal is never good. You want to make sure. So we really wanted to design the whole thing, and this was, I guess, a great compromise. It met all the city standards, it seems like, and it met our worry about trying to design a little piece and hope they all work together in the end. So now Joe can review all the utilities, even though it will be a while before we get to phase 2 or phase 3, and know that, okay, it's all physically going to work.
So when Elliot brings, the idea is that when this comes, let's say you review preliminary, if that's what the board decides, and again, this is up to the board, but if Elliot gets to the point where he's submitting final, you're only going to see the final application for only the piece of the subdivision that he has approval for at the state and local level, so that will comply with this 188-503F is the section of our ordinance. Because preliminary subdivision expires after 6 months if you don't get your final subdivision approval. And if you don't get your state approvals within, I think it's a year, then the whole thing expires. Your preliminary approval expires.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm looking for some clarity, and I apologize, it's late. I'm getting tired now. If I understood correctly, we're looking at a preliminary approval for the entire design before us this evening, which makes perfect sense, right? We have a whole picture. Everyone's designed it, engineered it on the whole scale. But when we move on to, and if no final is approved in 6 months, it would lapse. Or if we have final approved and he doesn't have his state required permits within a year?
So this is what I'm saying. This section that I have in front of you requires that the approvals be in hand when he comes in for final subdivision review. So he's going to phase the final subdivision review based on what he has for approval.
Correct. So if we do preliminary on this whole plan this evening, and in the next few weeks, he works out with his engineers, and then our peer reviews look it over, and phase 1 consists of 3 duplexes and a single family, because that's all he has. That's all we would be reviewing for phase 1, would be 3 units.
For final subdivision
For
of
final.
phase 1, yeah. And nothing is being expected to be issued tonight. I think the word tonight was just used as like an example, but this still has to go through, you know, your application completeness, public hearing, site walk, and all the normal steps for preliminary.
I was expecting preliminary tonight.
Elliot's been told several times he's not getting any approval tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you. That was a lot.
Clear as mud.
There's a lot. Okay.
So I just have one comment, I guess, and it just relates to the traffic moving permit, just because, I mean, I remember when Route 1 through Scarborough was repaved, and the state specifically narrowed the road through Dunstan, adding the sidewalks to calm the traffic. So, I mean, the state did this to themselves. You narrow the road to calm the traffic, and then the traffic moves more slowly.
Yeah, the worst part in that whole process is it's only a short little area, like Jeff said. And then once you get past through Dunstan, it goes right back to a wide 4 lanes all the way through the rest of the town.
But it was designed to be that way. It was designed to be visually cluttered, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, it is claustrophobic, even though the traffic lanes aren't particularly narrow.
Any other thoughts or questions from board members?
Yeah, Jeff mentioned human scaled. That's the idea. Well, and having the sidewalks, I mean, there's certainly, you should do that. Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to find the application complete.
Thank you, Joyce, for the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Joyce and a second by Carrie Lynn to find the application complete for preliminary subdivision and site plan review for 991 Portland Road. Any additional discussion?
I guess just pointing out that, yes, there are some permits, there are permit applications pending, but they've been submitted. And the applicant is now waiting for responses. So I feel the applicant has met their burden.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, the current DOT permit is what we're working within. The new one is looking for the future. I think we'll need a DEP amendment? Yes. Yeah. So we'll need it, but I think the city is taking jurisdiction over that.
Jeff?
Yeah, because that was where I was weighing out, is it complete without having the traffic permit? But he technically has one, and he has one that has some count on it, and he's sizing everything. So I guess in my mind, yes, he has one, and he understands very clearly the condition is that he can't build outside the scope of that. So I think we could continue our review. It doesn't seem drastic. It's not like he doesn't have one, and he knows he needs one, and he wants to push it through. He technically has one, and there's a little bit of a count left. So
He's working within it.
mhm.
Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes, sir, Bob.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes, yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to find the application complete. And in regards to scheduling a public hearing for November 12th, is that still an acceptable date, Emily?
So, Mr. Chair, I was going to ask if we could maybe think about scheduling this November 19th. It's only a week off, but I need to know that that's okay with the applicant because we've now added another item to the 12th. So
Okay.
Is that the 18th or the 19th?
it's the 19th.
19th, okay.
Don't move it up faster.
19th.
You can come, we won't be here.
Does that work for everyone?
Sure. Yeah, a meeting that night is on my schedule.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to schedule the public hearing for November 19th.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to schedule a public hearing for November 19th? Those in favor, Matt?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen. All right, continuing here briefly with our agenda this evening. Emily, any general correspondences this evening?
So we provided the general correspondence for the legal opinion in your after the fact packet. So that was the general correspondence we just want to make sure you had.
Yes, thank you. Any additional planning department updates or discussion items?
Yes, thank you for mentioning it. We do have an October 28th joint meeting with Planning Board and Council for those of you that can come out. We'll be working, I'll be working with the chair to put the agenda topics together. October 22nd is the Long Range Planning Committee meeting, so thanks for also bringing that up. We continue to look at and review projects under review. Tabby Way Street acceptance is going to be reviewed by City Council as new business on October 21st. And then I believe the one reading will be October 28th for everyone who follows the council items. And then adult use manufacturing request zoning amendments is going to be under review with the City Council as first reading on October 21st. We did send out a draft contract zone list to counselors. It is on our webpage at sacomaine.org/planning if you wanted to review and give any input or feedback. And then Berry Road, just wanted to, for those of you who haven't been following, there was a refreshed memorandum of understanding for Berry Road to upgrade sections of Berry Road for drainage and city street consideration. And there was a 2021 MOU that had iterations before that that's never come to fruition. So we've now had a 2024 version of it. And HEP Solar Farm developers are looking to have that MOU finalized. They did get council approval for it, but we just need to have it executed. And they're working with the property owners out there to bring that forward. And as part of that, they will be coming to the planning board at a future date, probably November 12th meeting, to review an access way change to the HEP Solar Farm. But the Berry Road MOU there's another iteration. If you wanted to see it, it's in the September 23rd council meeting, and that has been approved.
Okay, thank you.
What time on the 28th?
They usually meet at 6:30, and we're usually the first or second item on the top of the agenda. They usually put it in workshop.
Thank you.
We typically sit right in the front.
So I'll sit in the way back. Oh, you're actually serious.
Yeah.
I thought you were joking.
No, that we usually set up 2 tables on either side of the podium, and the board sits facing the council, and then there's like a discussion time. Usually Matt and I will pick like 3 or 4 topics that are relevant to the council and planning board and long range planning, and like present on those 3 or 4 topics. And then there'll be time for the board and council to kind of talk too. The board's supposed to meet with the council 2 times per year.
Do you have those topics yet, or are you still thinking about trying to figure that out?
I would say Matt and I will be working on what those topics are, but if you have topics, maybe send them to Matt, and he can compile if that's okay with you.
Sure.
I'm a broken record, so you don't want to hear my topics.
I know what your topics are, and I know what your topics are, and we usually do bring them up. Yeah.
Just like you talk about lighting.
Correct. Any planning board comments? All right. Well, with that, it is 9:46 p.m. and we will adjourn. Thank you.